Welcome to Open Exchange Studio. In this video, Kaifi will interview his dad.
As we discussed last time, his previous book, we did Reggae. Today, I plan to sort of look at his very first book that he published in Canada when we arrived here in 1973. I'm going to sort of ask him to do something similar that we did last time, read a few of his poems from that book. But before we start, I do want to Wali Alam Shaheen, welcome. As you know, he is my dad. I do have a few questions that I'd like to ask you before we start, if that's okay.
Okay,
So one is coming to Canada. That's a new environment for you. Did you have challenges in publishing this book? How did you go about finding the right publisher and getting this book published?
Okay, like when I came here, like those were the days of a struggle when you are in a new country. The first thing is the survival. So, and the struggle that goes with them. So I was busy more with my own bread and butter affairs, and even had to earn another degree from Caltech University, master's degree, because sometime I was asked, I don't have any degree from Canada and all that.
Canadian education.
So I did another master's in mathematical statistics, and so once gradually things became easier, and we were properly settled. We also received our citizenship and all that. So what happened, whenever I used to go for interview, I said, you don't have a Canadian degree, I don't have any Canadian work experience, and these kind of things. So I thought that it is proper. I took whatever job I got. It was not bad money wise, but it was not in my own line. So I all the initial hurdles that were there, that I was always mentioned. So I was told. So I gradually, one by one, those hurdles were gone. I had, within a year and a half, I got another master's degree, and within 3 years, so we had that citizenship, 3.5 years, and
that was 1977.
And also I had gained experience of working here at the same time. So, and then it was easier for me to jump to jobs within the public service, and got good footing in Canada. So, but what happens that my writing suffered a bit on that account, because there are only 24 hours in a day, and I used to work 7 days a week. So there was little room for writing, creativity. But it never leaves you. You are always there thinking about something, writing. In this book, Baynishan is the first book.
Well, let me just.
Baynishan is the first book that was published when I was in Canada, and I had well established myself. So actually, the first poem that is there, it relates to Canadian, I guess, environment. It begins with a poem that mentions Rideau Canal, Ottawa, the locale, and all that is there. But you can see from the poem, I will read that poem as well to see if it gives an idea of how a person who is new to an environment, a new language, new culture, how you cope with that. So the first poem in this book relates to that.
So I was going to actually have a follow-on question, but this is what inspired you to write this book? I think in some ways you have answered it, But if you want to maybe say a few more words about the inspiration for this specific book.
The one thing is that I never ceased publishing my poems in journals in India and Pakistan, wherever was it. I never stopped writing poetry. Not very certain of my own standing in a new country, but poetry-wise, I was always active. I was writing, publishing, going to readings, weekend readings, and thus I kept myself abreast of the developments taking place in Urdu literary world and the world at large. Like I have, when you see that the type of books that I have collected over the years, it is not only English literature. It is German literature, Spanish literature, Arabic literature, Persian literature, and all other types of literature that I was interested in. I started accumulating those books. And of course, you study is because reading is a very important thing when you write. And
if I can just add to this statement about all the books that he has in various topics, and I can tell you this: there are tens of bookshelves that are fully loaded. Some of them, their books are still sitting on my dad's table. The rooms, I always tell my dad that the house that you bought here is not to live here, so it's really for your books, because they are everywhere, different topics, different subjects. You can find it in science, mathematics, geography. There isn't a subject that, or sometimes a language that you can't find something on. He has got a very large collection of books. But getting back to this Baynishan, Abu, is there a specific theme or message that you want to pass on to your readers or Canadians, for that matter, from this specific book?
This book makes it evident that the place you live in, you will find all the references here. And you have to, it says again and again how you live your life in a neighborhood, in a city close by, in the country at large. And I have all those things included in poetic language in my book. And you will find that how the thought process that runs behind a poet's work, you will find it there. I have it, Ottawa is there, even Yukon and all other places which has appealed to me, in some way or another. I included in my poetry, not just like a report, now how that has affected my life. That is the main thing. You don't only observe things, how you take your observations and make it part of your life. That is important. And that is how I did in my poetry. And those who study my poetry, they say that there is so much here in my work, not only as an exile, a person who is away from the mainland, where your language is not your own mother tongue. There is a lot of things, a lot of hurdles that you have to encounter and develop a feeling for that. That is one thing, because it is not only that you are in a new place, it gives you a wider perspective as well. Even you can see your own country, your own village from a different angle, and that gives you a view that I didn't have before I came to Canada. So this angle, uh, this view that I got by just living in Canada and looking at things uh, very, as an observer, I should say, I looked at things very minutely and made it a part of my own existence, a day to day living. And the poetry says all that. And that's how I see that a poet's life is not his own life. It relates to not only his own experience, but the experience of other people that you can share with them. So it is a wider things that it is a circle, and around that there is another circle, and there is another circle, and there is a much bigger circle. And even those circles, you can have a Venn diagram too.
Yeah.
When the two circles collide, there is some common ground. You find that common ground like a Venn diagram.
Yeah, the intersections.
And the poetry also, it says, you can write poetry without thinking. You can have poetry of any kind. You don't need, you can rhyme two lines, which is very easy to do that.
Yeah.
But real poetry comes from deep thinking. Without that, there is no poetry, real poetry, that you can be uh, proud of or can be comfortable with. So that's how I think the poet's job is, in a sense, very important. If you remember, if you can recall the Vietnam War, in here it was a big thing, and it was Jean-Paul Sartre, who is called Sartre in French. You will know it. So Sartre, he said at one point, he himself was a great thinker and a great existentialist and a novelist. His three novels are masterpieces. And as a philosopher, he's well known. Even his Beauvoir, his partner, they are well known figures throughout the world. Now, when at one point Sartre said, "People are dying. Don't write poetry at this time. People are dying of hunger and all that, and you're writing poetry. It is not right." And there was a big response to that. An Italian poet, she is a great poet in Italian, Sparziani. She wrote a short poem. Her, I'm rephrasing it. Wrong, Mr. Sartre. Children are dying because the world is not practicing poetry, because the world doesn't know enough of poetry. That is why the kids are dying. Means if you know poetry, if you learn about poetry, if you see what the poets say, there won't be this hunger, because they stand for justice, peace, harmony, and all that. That is wrong, Mr. Sartre.
Okay.
Kids are dying, not because there is not food, because there is war and all that, because the world is not familiar with poetry. So you have to. This is the poetry. What poetry does, it affects you gradually, slowly. And I have been told by my own people. Some people have told me that here's my first book. He said it has been with me for all my life.
That's the reggae.
I don't know why reggae sauce and all and this. People have told me that. I feel good about that. That people have got something from me. So that's what poetry is. That's how I can go about it.
Just I'll have two brief questions before we start actually with the book itself. This book was published which year in Canada?
This book was published first in Pakistan in 1984,
1984.
and
Okay.
another edition of this was published in India in 1994.
So it has. Is it
10
still?
years.
Is it still in publication today, or are we out of? It's out of
Or
circulation.
maybe publishers might have. I don't keep track of
Okay.
that. So, but
So,
this is
so just again, as I mentioned about his first book, Reggae Saz, what we're going to try to do, that's Yvonne and I, are going to try to digitize these books as we speak to them, and then make it available as a PDF or some kind of link. Again,
Yeah, this
the
is
thinking
very-
is not all there, but how we do it, but the idea is in our heads today.
Yes.
The final question I think I'll ask, and this will be the last question, I guarantee it, is how would you like this book to be remembered as?
It's hard for me to say. It is for other people to say how they want. But I know that there are a lot of things in this book that people quote, and they talk about it. That lot of essays have been written, lot of criticism about this book, and criticism in a positive sense, that they have written a lot about it. And eminent critics of Urdu, they have written about it. Even the English newspapers have carried columns on this book.
Okay.
When it was published, Dr. Muhammad Ali Siddiqui, who wrote with the pen name in an English newspaper of Ariel. Ariel was the name under which he wrote literary columns. He mentioned this book in his 3 or 4 columns.
Okay.
He liked it so much. This was hailed by the eminent critic Professor Mumtaz Hussain and Dr. Hanifa, Professor Sahar Ansari, and a lot more. The name would be just cataloging names is not easy to and won't serve any purpose. The only thing I say that people, even if your one couplet stays with anyone for life, that is a great thing.
Yes.
They live by, and there are so many couplets here and poems. There's a small poem here. Professor Mumtaz Hussain, the eminent critic, he's no more now. He wrote a lot. The poem is only 6 lines long, small lines, but he has said so many things about it that I couldn't even see that much into that poem. So people have different angles, vision about poetry, and how they interpret. That is the whole thing. Even one thing, you can write something, and you might have some meanings when you wrote it, but people might see it in a different thing. A good poem or a good couplet has layers, different layers. People pick up one that relates to them. And that is very important, that if a poem, if a couplet can relate to different people can relate to it at different levels, that is the success of that couplet or because that's how it is.
Okay, thank you for this. So now what we've been waiting for, maybe Abu, if you can sort of recite a few of your ghazal or nazm from here, as well as maybe the one that you mentioned, somebody cited those 6 lines from this. If you can find that one, maybe read that as well. That would be very appreciated by
okay, I will have to find that. But in the meantime, I can read the first poem that I wrote when I arrived in Canada.
That'd be great.
And it has, I arrived here on 15th of August, and this was written the same month, a week later.
Okay.
So the poem's title is Qarye Jaan Ki Ek Nazm, the poem of being. That's, if you can try. I guess this is also included there with the translation. नहर रीडो के किनारे मैं खड़ा सोचता हूँ, नहर रीडो के किनारे मैं खड़ा सोचता हूँ, वही सरसब्ज घने पेड़ हैं, सूरज वही, वही सरसब्ज घने पेड़ हैं, सूरज वही, धूप में सारी तमाजत है जवान जिस्मों की, धूप में सारी तमाजत है जवान जिस्मों की, चश्मा अबरू है वही, हुस्न की सजदज वही। घर से निकला तो कई बार ख्याल आया था, घर से निकला तो कई बार ख्याल आया था, जुस्तजू है तो परेशान नजरी भी होगी, जुस्तजू है तो परेशान नजरी भी होगी, हर खुली आंख में रुसवाइयां मंडलाती हैं, हर खुली आंख में रुसवाइयां मंडलाती हैं, बासे दरबदरी दीदावरी भी होगी, बासे दरबदरी दीदावरी भी होगी। और आगे से कि ये मगर कौन सी मंजिल है सफ़र में अब के, ये मगर कौन सी मंजिल है सफ़र में अब के, पहले इतना तो न था दिल में खला का एहसास, पहले इतना तो न था दिल में खला का एहसास, दिन गुजर जाता है कुछ और अंधेरे देकर, ढल गई रात तो फिर सैले बला का एहसास। और आखिरी बंद है इस नज़्म का, इस बंद का करिए जहाँ की एक नज़्म जिसका आखिरी बंद है, अजनबी शहर में शीशे के घरों से बाहर, अजनबी शहर में शीशे के घरों से बाहर, झुरमटों में कोई अपना है गुमा तक मुश्किल, दर्द बेख्वाब सी आंखों का पुराना महरम, यूं है वह बांधा क्या बाहो फुगा तक मुश्किल, झुरमटों में कोई अपना है गुमा तक मुश्किल, यूं है वह बांधा क्या बाहो फुगा तक मुश्किल। ये this was the first poem I wrote when I landed in Canada, and now if I can find that poem easily, yeah,
Just
I got
one
it.
comment while he's finding the other poem. Now, Pakistan was created on August 14th, 1947. And that's when you left, I think, Islamabad, right?
I left Islamabad on that date, not that year.
No, obviously,
Yeah,
no, on that date.
Yeah,
And then you
Yeah.
arrived here on August 15th,
15, August
when
15,
when
landed in
India
Montreal.
was created in
Oh,
1947.
yeah,
So,
right.
so
Yeah, that's
again,
true,
it's
that's
just sort of
So
interesting
we have lived
observation.
here for 52 years. This is our 53rd year.
True.
Yeah. So that small poem, which has
Been coded.
it's the idea is simple. I have just said that there is a bird by the river, flies, dips in water, darts forth, and comes out and flips its wings, and uh, and the water, the bird's wings, uh, it's drops the water from its bird wing, and then it it takes turns and twists, and then again goes into water and comes out, darts forth and comes out. And the title of the poem is Dance of Life, Raqs Hayat, but that is life.
Dance to life.
So that is what the struggle, that imagery, it is powerful. बार बार रक़्स हयात, बार बार एक चिड़िया तीर बन के उड़ती है, तीर बन के उड़ती है, flies like an arrow, पेज खा के मुड़ती है, it twists and turns
Looks
and
like a
twists,
page.
पेज खा के मुड़ती है, मेघना के पानी में, मेघना is a river in Bengal, मेघना के पानी में डुबकियां लगाती है, it takes a plunge in the water of Meghna, और फिर लबे साहिल, and it comes back to the shore, और बालों पर सुखाती है, and dries its wings, dries its wings. बार बार एक चिड़िया मेघना के पानी में. It is just this, nothing. But they said that the language is so simple, matter of fact, and that you can't even think of a language simpler or purer than this. And the Professor Mumtaz Hussain passed a comment that we have now arrived at a stage we can say that poetry can be as simple as day-to-day language. So he added that comment on that.
Nice.
So this was this Raqs-e-Hayat, dance of life. And I can read one again, Ghazal, the same. I have read Ghazal. Nazm has many forms. Even Ghazal has now different forms. Ghazal, Nazm has many forms in Urdu. Like it is a more Nazm Morra, which is called blank verse. Nazm Azad, which is called free verse. And there is Naat, is some religious poetry. And then there is the Manqabat, there is Musaddas, there is Muhammas, there is Musallas. These are all different, Rubai and all that. And I have also added to that those three-liners, two-liners, one-liner. So there are lots of forms in Nazm, but Ghazal has one very rigid structure. Rigid structure. But even there, people have tried to make some dent. And but Ghazal, as it stands, is very popular. Very popular. People go for it, and there's a lot of wisdom there.
Okay.
However, there is one Ghazal from Baynishan. This Baynishan, this title page was made by one of the most famous artists of Pakistan, Mujid. Mujid artist. He is no longer living there. So he had made this. Of course, I didn't have any hand in that. It was the publisher who got all this done. So,
And the meaning of this
Baynishan is like without address.
Not without aim, which I thought it was. It's not.
Baynishan is without address.
Okay.
There is a poem here with that title.
Okay.
And I used that poem itself for as the title of the book because it expressed the feeling of alienation or being an exile and being at a place which sometimes you have to struggle to call your own. Initially, that is how it happens.
Just like a vagabond, is that?
No, not vagabond.
No address,
Vagabond
Baynishan, I guess.
The exile, Baynishan is one who has no proper identity. That is. Like if you remember, there's an American poet, E. Cummings, English poet. His line is, "Our permanent address is tomorrow." Our permanent address is tomorrow. So that is one aspect of how you can be even identity-less. Wherever you are identity-less. Sometimes you don't have identity because the present doesn't provide you the comfort that you need or the space that you need. The present situation. So he says, our permanent address is tomorrow. That is where the trust is.
Okay.
So Baynishan is you like an address or identity, or you can add adjectives to that. It covers many adjectives in that sense. Okay. So here is one ghazal in that book. पराई आग में यूं जल बुझे शरर मेरे खुले न मुझ पे भी अहवाल बेशर मेरे पराई आग में यूं जल बुझे शरर मेरे खुले न मुझ पे भी अहवाल बेशर मेरे हजरत रेंगते सायों की जद में शाख गुलाब हजरत रेंगते सायों की जद में शाख गुलाब तुम आए हो भी तो किस रुत में आज घर मेरे तुम आए भी हो तो किस रुत में आज घर मेरे सजा वजूद से भी कब्ल हो चुकी मखसूम खबर न रख मेरी इस दर्जा बेखबर मोरे सजा वजूद से भी कब्ल हो चुकी मखसूम खबर न रख मेरी इस दर्जा बेखबर मोरे. This couplet one evening at a literary sitting in Karachi, and I was new to Karachi as well, but there was a professor of philosophy Dr. Manzoor Ahmed. He spoke for half an hour on this couplet. Of course, he has his own interpretation of this, but he spoke for half an hour just on this. सजा वजूद से भी कबल हो चुकी मखदूम खबर न रख मेरी इस दर्जा बेखबर मेरे. He ultimately became the vice chancellor of Karachi University, and he was head of course, he was head of the philosophy department.
Okay.
So that is one thing that I can say how people relate. I cannot say much about that couplet, but people who have that kind of vision, they interpret it at different levels. And his philosophical approach to that couplet was great. I was very elated hearing his comments. Dr. Manzoor Ahmed. He died recently. I saw it on Facebook that he has passed away. सदा वजूद से भी कबल हो चुकी मखदूम खबर न रख मेरी इस दर्जा बेखबर मेरे छतों पे साया कुना बेल जल गई होगी सुलग उठे हैं कुछ इस तौर बामो दर मेरे सुलग उठे हैं कुछ इस तौर बामो दर मेरे हमारे बीच शराबों का एक रिश्ता था हमारे बीच शराबों का एक रिश्ता था कहाँ बिछड़ गए सहरा में हम नजर मेरे कहाँ बिछड़ गए सहरा में हम नजर मेरे वो राख बनती हुई गूंज में सितारा बार वो राख बनती हुई गूंज में सितारा बार सराने कौन परेशान था रात भर मेरे सराने कौन परेशान था रात भर मेरे उतर रही थी किरण बर्फ की चट्टानों पर उतर रही थी किरण बर्फ की चट्टानों पर चला गया वो मुझे ख्वाब सौंप कर मेरे गुजर गई शब यल्ला तो ये हुआ मालूम सुरंग पार भी दुश्मन थे हम सफ़र मेरे दयार बाद जनूब ए दयार बाद जनूब तुझे सुकून तो है गुल बखेर कर मेरे और आखिरी मक्ता है कि मैं ताक ताक हूँ शाहीन कब से शम्मा बकफ मैं ताक ताक हूँ शाहीन कब से शम्मा बकफ के जीना जीना वो उतरे कभी तो घर मेरे के जीना जीना वो उतरे कभी तो घर मेरे. And I will read another ghazal.
Please, yeah.
This ghazal has, I will again, there is so much to talk about that I have to digress. I was asked to by a Canadian magazine to contribute something. It was easier for me to translate this ghazal of mine, and the magazine was Possibilities. Teas with two eyes. It was a particular name,
Okay.
Possibilities. Editor was Maureen Henry. So I submitted that poem, gave it to him. This poem has been declared as one of the 26 best poems of Canada in 1994. Windhouse Reader, a Halifax publisher, they said that they had collected 250 poems from all over Canada, from all the poetry books published and from all the magazines, and they shortlisted it to 50 poems.
Okay. So this is 1994, the second publication of this book, right? Because we had two publications.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with.
Okay.
The first publication was already 1984.
Right.
So, and then those 50 poems were further, I guess, selected to make it a shorter list of 26 poems. This was one of the one included in those 20. And in that list are big names in Canada, like Margaret Atwood was one of them, but she was not included. Her poem was not included there.
Okay.
And some other, there are big names there. I just see as one of the wildest songs that they will consider. Yeah. And this poem was, I had written originally in Urdu, and it was my own plain translation of that. And that was given the status of one of the best poems, 26 best poems of Canada.
So the translation was done by you. I know you've had some of your books translated to English and other languages for that matter, but this specific poem, you did the translation yourself.
It was my own translation. So I read that poem.
Please.
not poem, the ghazal.
Yeah.
کر کے تخلیق ہمیں بھول گیا ہو جیسے، کر کے تخلیق ہمیں بھول گیا ہو جیسے، پالنے والا کوئی اور خدا ہو جیسے، پالنے والا کوئی اور خدا ہو جیسے، شکر لازم ہے تیرا یا کہ تجھے کر دوں معاف، شکر لازم ہے تیرا یا کہ تجھے کر دوں معاف، بھید مجھ پر تیرا اب تک نہ کھلا ہو جیسے، بھید مجھ پر تیرا اب تک نہ کھلا ہو جیسے، اب فیصلہ اس کا تھا اب ساری ندامت میری، فیصلہ اس کا تھا اب ساری ندامت میری، یہ میرے جرم خاموشی کی سزا ہو جیسے، یہ میرے جرم خاموشی کی سزا ہو جیسے، اپنے انداز میں چاہا ہے تمہیں سب سے الگ، مجھ کو اصرار نہیں تم مجھے چاہو جیسے، تم مجھے چاہو جیسے، اب تو ہستی کا مقدر ہیں تہی مائے گیاں، اب تو ہستی کا مقدر ہیں تہی مائے گیاں، ذہن اور جیب کا رشتہ بھی بڑا ہو جیسے، ذہن اور جیب کا رشتہ بھی بڑا ہو جیسے، دن گزارے ہیں تیری ہم سفری میں اتنے، دن گزارے ہیں تیری ہم سفری میں اتنے، میں تیرے ساتھ ہوں تو بھول گیا ہو جیسے، میں تیرے ساتھ ہوں تو بھول گیا ہو جیسے، میں نے چپکا دیے اس طرح ورق کچھ باہم، میں نے چپکا دیے اس طرح ورق کچھ باہم، جزو ہستی میرا ماضی نہ رہا ہو جیسے، جزو ہستی میرا ماضی نہ رہا ہو جیسے، اور am I skipping to وہ couplets، اب بھی شاہین اسی سمت قدم اٹھتے ہیں، اب بھی شاہین اسی سمت قدم اٹھتے ہیں، میری خاطر کوئی دروازہ کھلا ہو جیسے، میری خاطر کوئی دروازہ کھلا ہو جیسے، کر کے تخلیق ہمیں بھول گیا ہو جیسے، پالنے والا کوئی اور خدا ہو جیسے۔ اور how much time do we have?
That's good, Abu. I think we are running low on time, right? So I'd like to thank you again for talking about this book
Okay.
with us. I'm sure
Okay.
it's going to be very interesting to our audience. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the session or interview, we don't have any of these copies available today, but I'm going to work with my colleague sitting across me to digitize this and see where we can go. And if any
Thank you.
one of you have
Yeah.
some ideas on how I can do
Yeah.
this digitization, let us know. We'll try to
Thank you,
leverage.
Kafi, and thank you, Yvonne, for being here all along,
You're welcome.
and your expertise will show.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
Thank you.
that's